Hello and welcome to another episode of Two Guys on a Chainsaw. I'm Todd.
And I'm Craig.
Happy Valentine's Day, Craig.
Hey, happy Valentine's Day.
A few days late, but you know, what are we going to do?
Whatever.
It was on a Friday this year, you know. Did you do anything special?
Oh, no. Of course not. No.
Neither did we.
Alan and I, we ordered dinner out. Not like that's something special, but it's not something we do every day. So I guess if you want to call that special, I had a hamburger.
Wow.
It was very romantic.
That's so exciting. It's not even a thing here in China, so the day almost completely passes by. It was a little toward the middle of the day that Liz was like, "Hey, did you know today's Valentine's Day?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I kind of remembered that."
It was the same for us too. Alan texted me in the middle of the day. "Oh, I forgot it's Valentine's Day. Love you."
Well, once I realized it was Valentine's Day, I wanted to throw in a Valentine's themed episode because we don't have too many movies anyway, I think, left to do.
A new one came out this year.
I saw that. Yeah, I'm really excited to do it next year.
Hard Eyes. Maybe, yeah, next year.
This one has been on our very, very short Valentine's Day list forever. And you know, this is a movie that I acquired a long time ago, like when we first started this podcast. So I was really happy to finally have an excuse to get around to it. It's called X-Ray, otherwise known as Hospital Massacre, from 1982.
Or a couple other things.
Yeah.
Like, apparently, did you see that? Like, Ward 13 or something?
Yes.
Like, there were... I was like, what?
There's another one. It was like, Be My Valentine or Else or something like that. What was
I don't know.
Imagine.
It's crazy.
That was probably a drive-in title. This whole movie, I didn't know much about it, really. You know, like I said, I'd been thinking about doing it for years, but it kept showing up on lists, always on these short lists of Valentine's Day movies, and nothing else, really. And as soon as the credits come up, the very first thing that pops up on the screen is it's a Canon film production.
It's always a good sign.
Always a good sign. I was like, oh, I think I'm going to really like this. For one reason or another, I'm going to enjoy this movie.
Yeah, it's probably going to, it's like, when I see Canon, I get really excited because I think it's probably going to be bad, but in a good way. And that, it excites me.
And in that sense, it really did not disappoint me at all. I have to admit.
Yeah.
This is one of those movies I wish I had been in the room with you, because we would have been rolling our eyes and laughing out loud, looking at each other through this whole thing. It is the pinnacle of ridiculousness.
We probably would have been talking through it because, God, like it's so long, and like just the longest, most drawn out scenes with just nothing happening and like no dialogue. I'm like, oh my God, I can't tell you how many. Listen, this makes it sound bad. There are a lot of things I liked about this movie, but it felt like it was a week long.
Oh my God. I remember being an hour in and checking for the very first time the time, being going, okay, we got like 5 more minutes left. This looks like they're wrapping it up. And I was like, 21 minutes? And I turned to Liz and she's like, you are kidding me. Because she was only half paying attention to this, but even she was looking up every now and then, rolling her eyes and looking at me like, what in the hell is this all about?
Yeah, I have in my notes, we're only a half hour in and I'm already bored.
Oh.
I was bored by, you can take it wherever you want, but I'm pooping on it. I want to give it its flowers too. What bored me was the story, because there really isn't one. But it's fun to look at, and there's some really fun things along the way. So like ultimately, I walked away from this movie happy to have seen it, because I had never heard of it ever. I don't recall ever hearing anything about this movie. So this feels like some lost thing.
Yes.
That I somehow missed. And it's so 80s, and it's so 80s slasher, and stylistically it's pretty good. So it's super, super rare that I get to see something like this for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And for that reason, it was really fun.
I'm with you on all of that. You know, the cinematography, like everything was lit really well. There's lots of effective close-ups and things like that. It just feels like they're stretching it for time the entire way through.
Mm-hmm.
Like every scene is drawn out as long as it possibly can, to the point of comedy. Like there were moments where I thought, are they trying to be funny here by stretching the scene out so long and making this so overly dramatic? And another thing that added to that was the music. The music was intense all the time.
Crazy.
Just like
all the time. The music wanted you to believe that every moment was the scariest moment. It never eased up. Like, it's always this super, super intense. And sometimes it's like strings, like orchestral, but then sometimes it's like omen exorcisty chanting, like ha hey ha.
Yeah, but never is it like synthy stuff. It's like a proper score.
It sounds good. It sounds good, but it's all the time. Like,
yeah.
Every moment can't be the most intense moment.
Not according to this movie.
And going along with the music, this movie seems far, far, far more concerned with style over substance.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I don't have any problem with that. But I almost kind of wish that I had a heads up. I think I may have been in a better mindset for it. But when I say that, like, there's so many strange, unexplainable things. Like, the plot is paper thin, and we should get to it in a second, but just so many weird things. Like, there's some weird thing with threes. Like, there's these weird groups of three people throughout. It was almost reminding me of like the Macbeth's witches or something. Like,
that's an interesting take.
It was.
There's 3 nurses, 3 doctors, 3 old ladies.
There's 3 nurses. There's the 3 creepy old ladies. I'm pretty sure one of those old ladies was a man, but they're very crone witch-like.
Yeah.
Then there's those 3 weirdos in the gas masks and the 3 weirdos in like full body cast. Very weird.
I didn't even think of that, but you're right. How weird is that?
There were times that I was wondering, is this even really happening? Or is she crazy? Because it's so wacky and cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs that it doesn't seem that it even exists in a realm of reality.
That's true.
I mean, even just the way that it's shot. Like, this is in a hospital. This is a hospital slasher. And every room is lit by the tiniest desk light they could possibly have found.
Yes, it's a really dark hospital. It's a very, very dark hospital. And by the way, I grew up going to hospitals because my parents were both nurses. Hospitals are not dark. They are lit very brightly.
Oh my God, they are so brightly lit. It's ridiculous. And typically heavily populated.
Yes.
And at various points of this movie, parts of the hospital are completely abandoned. Oh my God.
Sometimes
all right,
it's
but we
full
should,
of
okay.
people. Sometimes it's not.
Let's set it up because it's such an easy setup, all right? So it opens up with this cold open. It says Susan's house, 1961, and these 2 blonde kids are playing with a train set on Valentine's Day, and there's Valentine's stuff all around.
Mm-hmm.
Another little boy, young Harold, played by Billy Jane, who I love. Billy Jane pops up in this shit all the time, and it makes me so happy.
Yeah.
And he... Interestingly enough, he and the little blonde girl in this scene were also in Bloody Birthday. I think this same year.
Yeah. Billy Jane was doing a lot of horror early on. Like he did like TV episodes here and there. Like he was in the Bad News Bears. But then he did like Bloody Birthday. He did X-Ray, Superstition. We also did Superstition. He was in that. The Beastmaster. Some movie called Nightmares, which has always been on my list. And he was Brett Camber in Cujo.
Oh, right.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So, he's been around here. But, I mean, I kind of mostly remember him from that movie we talk about a lot, just one of the guys.
Yeah, totally. That's totally what I remember him from. I think somewhere subconsciously I had a big crush on him. I wasn't aware of it at the time, but looking back. So anyway, the 2 blonde kids are playing with a train or whatever. Billy Jane is peeking in at them. He knocks on the door and leaves an envelope outside the door and runs away. And the little girl gets it and goes inside and opens it up. And it's, a cute heart-shaped Valentine. I don't remember what it said. Just something simple like, "Will you be my Valentine?"
Mm-hmm.
But the little blonde kids laugh and crumple it up and throw it on the floor. And she goes in to get some Valentine's Day cake, which is the first time of many, many times that you see a ridiculously ominous shot for no reason.
Yes!
Like, the camera, closes up on this enormous, shiny, sharp knife.
Which she pulls out of the drawer so slowly.
And like looks at it, like
raises it high above her head slowly, and then almost comically like starts to bring it down and then slows down and actually cuts through the cake.
something like this happens every 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Just creepy, weird shots for no reason. Whatever. She cuts into the cake, but then she hears something strange in the other room. So she goes in, and her friend, her little blonde friend, has been hung on the coat rack.
I think he was impaled on the coat rack through his mouth or something. God, that was shocking. Actually,
it was a quick shot.
I was surprised to see a kid murdered. It's not often you see a kid murdered in a movie, especially in the beginning.
Yeah, well, and presumably by this other little kid who then like is still like looking in the window, like laughing, and then runs away.
I mean, that's, the girl you like shuns your Valentine, and this is your response. This kid needs help.
The director of this movie is Boaz Davidson, and I don't know. The only other thing that I know that he directed was like The Last American Virgin or something, which I haven't seen. I've heard of it.
He's really kind of one of the early canon guys, like the two Israeli guys, Golan and Globus, right? The two guys who started Canon Films, they, I believe, bankrolled. They started in Israel. They're both Israeli, and they started in Israel. This guy's an Israeli director, and they had a movie that they produced that he did called The Lemon Popsicle, which is this sort of Grease-style movie about coming of age in the 50s, but in Israel. And it's got a lot of sex in it, and it's got all that kind of stuff. And that was so popular internationally. It was a big hit, especially in Germany, I think, that gave them, I think, their first really big hit and allowed them to start really going forward with their new studio. And then they remade Lemon Popsicle, this director did, as The Last American Virgin in the States. Kind of interesting. He went on to do a lot of horror, this director. It's like horror or thrillers.
Anything else that we've seen?
I don't think anything else that we've seen he's directed. He produced a lot as well.
Well, what I was going to say was this feels like an 80s slasher movie. Like this is, peak time, 1981. I think this is the same year that Halloween 2 came out, which is also a hospital slasher. Coincidentally, some parallels. But it feels like somebody in the peak time of these 80s slashers wanted to make one, but didn't really get them.
Right.
Like this setup, I mean, sometimes you get the backstory in the beginning. Like I feel like in, what's that camp one that's not Friday the 13th? The Burning.
The Burning, yeah.
In The Burning, don't you kind of get the backstory right in the very beginning?
Oh, yeah, the Mutilator, a lot of them.
Yeah, it happens sometimes, but in this one, it just seems so obvious. Like,
yeah,
like there's no suspense. Like, who could the killer be?
Yeah, there's no attempt to really hide. I mean, it's supposed to be a mystery, but anybody with like half a point of intelligence is gonna figure out who this killer is for the stupidest reason.
I hope that this is a safe space to share this, because I'm gonna tell you that I didn't even put it together.
Oh, really?
Like, I'm so stupid. No, like I just kind of forgot about the backstory. I was like,
oh yeah,
who's the creepy doctor? But it's so obvious. In fact, it's so obvious that I'm just gonna go ahead and spoil it because it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. We know the guy's name because he signs the Valentine. His name is Harold. Well, then later in the movie, she meets a guy named Harry. And I swear to God, while I was watching the movie, I saw Billie Jane in the first minute. And I'm like, oh, I think that's Billie Jane. So I went to IMDb to look, and you have to scroll way, way down. But yes, it's him. And he's billed as young Harry.
To be fair, they didn't have IMDb back in 1982.
And I still was a little surprised.
Oh, no. Wow. It's okay. Well, it's a little unbelievable how he's introduced in the movie anyway to believe that he's the mastermind behind all this. So they are kind of trying to throw you off the scent a little bit. But also, when it's revealed that it's him, it is revealed in the most dramatic fashion. Normally, right, there's a twist. There's like the hint that you didn't see, the whole Kaiser Soze moment, right, where all of it comes together. But for this one, it's literally about his name. It's literally his name. So you get that intense moment where it's like, Harry, Harold.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very on the nose for people dum-dums like me
Yeah.
who forgot about that cold open.
Right.
And you're right, it is very dramatic. I mean, the thing that I suppose could throw you is, so the killer, when we see him killing people, is decked out like a surgeon. Hairnet, face mask, gloves, gown. You can see very, very little of him. He looks like a tall, lean man, and you can kind of see his eyes. I don't think the guy in that costume is the actor who plays Harry.
No, I don't think so.
They don't look alike.
I don't think so.
Which, again, is fine. I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, maybe that's better. Maybe that builds some intrigue. Who cares? Whatever. But that reveal, like, I mean, we're jumping to the very end, but who cares? Because he's wearing all that stuff, eventually he gets our main girl, who is the same girl, Susan, 19 years later, except now, instead of being a platinum blonde, she's a dark brunette. Like, why?
That was the first thing I noticed. When did she turn brunette?
Right. But he gets her in a position, she reaches up and pulls the mask off, and she says, Harry, because that's how he introduced himself as a doctor. And it's not Harry, it's Harold. It's Harold. Like, calm down. Like, why is this an issue?
You did introduce yourself as Harry, let's be fair.
Right? It was very strange. Yeah, it was very strange. But yeah, getting kind of back to the linear plot, it jumps from that cold open to 19 years later, and she's a brunette now, and she's played by Barbie
Benton. Yeah.
You should talk about her, because I'm sure you know a lot more about her than I do.
I mean, the name came up and I was like, I know this name. And then her face came up and I'm like, this is probably a woman who is all over television. She looks like she's been on the Love Boat. I literally thought that.
She's very beautiful.
And of course she's been on the Love Boat. No, she's only like 6 episodes, but still, Love Boat, Fantasy Island. She was a Playboy playmate, so her name was going around. And an earlier girlfriend of Hugh Hefner. Apparently, he proposed to her like 4 times, but she's like, why would I marry you?
Right, smart lady.
But they dated for quite a while when she was like in her 20s and he was in his 40s, which isn't unusual for Hugh Hefner. But
no.
She also had a little bit of a singing career as well. She was traveling around the country doing country songs, and she had one hit that was number 6 on the U.S. country charts called Brass Knuckles, which I went to YouTube and listened to. And I mean, I'm not a huge country fan. It sounds kind of like most of the country songs that were kicking around in the 70s, but she's a good singer. She's beautiful, absolutely gorgeous.
She is. She is epitome, like, 80s glam, big feathered hair.
Striking features, really sparkling eyes. Strong cheekbones.
She's top tier.
Yeah.
Like she's very beautiful. She looks mainstream. She looks like, you're absolutely right. That was a perfect description. She looks like she should be on the Love Boat. It's that kind of soap opera glam.
And I also felt like for a little while, maybe even most of the movie, it seemed like the movie almost existed just to ogle over her.
Yes.
We are in her face so much, and we have these long, slow shots of her close up, and she's turning around, and every time she just looks like she's sparkling.
What I was going to say was, when I saw her, I thought that I kind of had her pegged as just a beauty. Like, that's it. That's the whole reason she exists in this movie. She's not bad at all.
Yeah.
In terms of acting. She is perfectly satisfactory.
Yeah. Surprisingly so.
I'm not going to kind of surprisingly so for this type of movie. She's in it a lot. Most of it. Like, she's in, I would say, like 95% of the movie that we're with her most of the time.
Just revolves around her, basically.
And she, she's not going through stuff like Demi Moore is going through stuff in The Substance, but she's going through stuff in this movie.
She's going through some bullshit.
She is going through a lot of bullshit that makes absolutely no sense.
Not at all.
But by the end, she's given it something.
Yeah.
By the end, they're treating her like she's crazy. She doesn't think she's crazy. I don't know if she's crazy, but she's thrashing around and fighting and sweating and doing a very serviceable job of it. I was actually very impressed with her.
Yeah, me too. I was actually surprised she wasn't in many more horror movies after this. In fact, I don't think she was in any horror movies after this.
I don't know, but in terms of plot, what happens next people start getting murdered by this doctor in various ways, people that are in various ways connected to her. And there are fun kills that we can talk about, whichever ones of them or all of them that you want, but that's all that happens.
Yeah.
And there's like a subplot of the killer is for some unknown reason fucking with her medical records to make the other doctors think that she's dying.
This is the funniest part of the whole movie. This movie could have been tweaked a little bit to make it a dark comedy, because it is 100% almost unintentional dark comedy.
Yep.
Because the whole central premise of this movie is that this woman, first of all, she hands her kid off to her ex-cousin Tom, and they clearly hate each other's guts.
And he's creepy because everybody's creepy.
Everybody's creepy because we're supposed to suspect everybody. So she hates Tom and then goes in the car with her, I don't know, boyfriend or something like that.
Fiancé.
Goes, I hate him. And then he drops her off at the hospital because she has to pick up the results of some checkup that she did. That is it. He is there to wait out in the car while she pops into the hospital for 5 or 10 minutes to pick up her checkup. And as he drops her off, he goes,
"Hey, wait, isn't this the hospital where they had all that trouble last year?
What trouble?
Some patient ran amok or something."
That was crazy. Like, it's such a stupid line.
It's dumb and it's unnecessary.
And it's surely, like, even if that's something that really happened, it's surely not connected to the events of this movie.
Not at all.
Is it to suggest that some killer, like, escaped and killed a bunch of people and has just been hanging out there then? Like, just waiting for her? That doesn't make any sense at all.
It's because, like you said earlier,
none of it makes any sense.
This is a movie made by some people who really don't understand these movies, but they're like, oh, well, we've got to get this in there because it's in every other horror movie we reviewed.
Yes. Right.
Just like when she goes inside and she goes to the nurse's station to pick up her thing. And by the way, it's heavily decorated for Valentine's Day. That's cute. And who is lingering in the background, overly suspicious, but a janitor leaning on his mop. Head between the two. You can't take your eyes off of this janitor because he is mugging it for the camera.
And he's just staring, just glaring at her sinisterly.
And the music's sinister. She gets in the elevator. She looks over, and there's a guy. She looks down, and like stuff that is clearly not blood, but is red, drips on her foot. And she looks over, and there's this guy who's leaned against the wall with some red stuff coming out of his mouth. And the camera pans back to her as she's a little horrified. And then the camera pans back to him. And then he raises a burger to his mouth, and he's got ketchup like all over his hands.
So gross.
It's so gross, but it also makes no sense. There's no way you could get that much ketchup all over your
I know, it doesn't make any sense. But it is just like they're just throwing shit at the wall.
Yes, exactly.
Again, I don't mind. That's fine. But
it's fun.
It's a little bit jarring. Because that guy, he's supposed to be kind of, I guess, I mean, all of the other characters are sinister in this way, really. All of them. Except, ironically, Harry, which maybe should have been a clue. He's the nice one. But this guy, the elevator guy, pops up all the time. He's apparently a patient, but he just wanders the hall with a giant bottle of liquor.
Yeah.
And is drunk and, like, grabby and like peeping Tom. And there's one point where she's getting examined, and that's an important scene that we must talk about at length.
Oh, we will talk about this.
But she's getting examined, and she's mostly nude, and creepy drunk guy is peeking at her through a window, and one of the nurses, I don't remember what their names were, but they were fantastic. One of the nurses like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm just enjoying the show or something." And she's like, "Get back to your room." And he kind of turns around and walks a couple steps away, and she turns around and walks away, and he just comes back and keeps watching. Like, they don't, like, he's just the local perv that's like, oh, that guy.
That guy, just allowed to wander the halls drunk in the hospital, but go back to your room every now and then.
God.
We also have to talk about the 9th floor, because after he gets out of the elevator, she was asked to go to the 8th floor to go to the Dr. Jacobs office or something, but the elevator stops, and there's this intensity where what's going on, and we get the first of many POV shots of a heavy breathing person. It's very Giallo-like. heavy breathing person, except this, instead of black gloves on, he's got rubber gloves on, rubbing a photo of her when she was a girl, stumbling around in darkness, sinister music. And then Dr. Jacobs gets called to the 9th floor. The elevator stopped at the 9th floor when Susan
Which doesn't make any sense.
No.
Like, I guess she just accidentally hit.
Yeah.
Like, it would make sense if it accidentally stopped at the 7th floor, but she's trying to get to the 8th and it accidentally stops on the 9th. That doesn't even make any sense. But that's the first time the door opens and it's all smoky back there. And it's just, again, the music is telling you that something terrifying is about to happen. And it opens and there are just 3 guys there in gas masks. And they're like, you can't be up here. We're fumigating this floor.
Oh, the 9th floor.
And then for the rest of the time, that whole floor is in disarray. Like, I don't know what's going on. Like, it looks like a construction site or something. I don't know. But it's also constantly, the whole span of the movie, filled with like smoke. It's so stupid. If you don't fumigate.
Oh my God. And nobody seems to know that it's fumigated because people go up to the 9th floor. I mean, you'd think
all the time.
Everybody would know. Everybody who works there would know the 9th floor is being fumigated and filled with smoke. That couldn't happen in a hospital either because they have very sophisticated ventilation systems that are connected and stuff. And
exactly.
Yada, yada, yada. But did you think that those guys in the gas mask were a bit of a call out to My Bloody Valentine?
Didn't that movie come out this same year too? 1981 was a big year for slashers.
It was.
I mean, it's a creepy image, but again, I don't know who those people are. I guess they're really the fumigators. We never see them again.
Same year. You're right. Same year.
Yeah, it's probably just a coincidence, I guess, but
yeah.
An interesting coincidence considering they're both Valentine's movies.
Mm-hmm.
But that POV shot, that was the killer stopping the elevator while she's in it before she can get to the 8th floor so that the killer can kill her doctor,
yes,
her lady doctor. And I don't remember how he kills her. He uses mostly medical implements or things that would be available in a hospital.
That was cool.
I did like that, except for some reason, slasher movies, the people who make them seem to think that hospitals just keep big open vats of acid around.
That's right.
And I never understood what... Why? Why would there just be big stainless steel sinks of acid just sitting there? Like, it doesn't make any sense. I don't remember how he killed the doctor, do you?
Well, he has total and complete access to the intercom system, the announcements in the hospital. So he announces, Dr. Jacobs, please report to the 9th floor. So she goes up there, and of course the door's open, and she steps out into complete fog, which doesn't seem to faze her at all. So she just starts slow walking through the emptiness and disarray of the 9th floor, I guess looking for whoever said she needed to report there. And yeah, she just walks around for a while, and then he comes up behind her, puts his hand over her mouth, and stabs her in the chest a couple times, and ends up stuffing her upside down, we found out later, in like a locker up there. And in the meantime, Susan is stuck in the elevator, and he lets the elevator go, but then he apparently rushes down to Dr. Jacobs' office, and he goes through the medical, I thought they were medical charts, but it turns out they're x-rays, on Dr. Jacobs' desk, finds the one marked Susan, switches it with his own, and handwrites Susan across the front of it. Just in time. Mm-hmm. We got a lot of POV.
Yeah, and he's still in there when she shows up. She doesn't see him. And like, things happen, but they're so inconsequential. Like,
the janitor goes back up there.
Yeah, and he kills the janitor by dumping his head in a vat of toxic waste that just sits around the hospital, apparently.
Yeah.
And that effect was weird. Like, they obviously just made some sort of like cowl to put over his face.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of actually liked the look of it. It didn't look real at all, but it was kind of a cool look.
It's a cool look.
Susan's trying to call her husband, but he won't answer. And like, why isn't he answering? And then for some reason she calls back later, and the daughter's like, he went out.
Yeah.
And left me here alone. And for some reason we see him with a butterfly knife.
Yeah.
For some reason, like, and I feel like none of this comes to anything.
No.
Like, it's just building suspense that leads to nothing. Everybody is a creeper. There's a very, very long scene where an old man with a walker walks very, very slowly down a hall towards her where she's just standing leaning against the wall. Nothing else is happening. And he gets to her and then just stands there and stares at her for about a minute before she just walks away, and he turns around and walks into his room. That had to have been a 2-minute scene.
Yeah, it was nuts. And the music is so intense throughout all of this. I wanted to know why she was there wandering the hallways. I mean, she just...
Smoking cigarettes.
There's a lot of just her just standing there. And something happens and she's there. I'm like, you have business to do. You have a man waiting outside in the car.
I completely forgot about him.
Yeah, until he comes in again. That was funny.
Hours later, that's the other thing that drives me nuts. Like, so her real doctor is dead, but one of the other doctors, the nice one, I think, Dr. Harry, gets the results and he looks at him. He's like, hold on a second. And he takes him to another doctor.
Dr. Jacobs.
And the other doctor's like, we think you need to stay for some tests. And they keep telling her things like that. Eventually, they tell her that she's going to have to stay for a few days for observation. But they won't tell her why. Like, they won't even give her any suggestion.
It's so unrealistic.
At one point, she's like...
Is it serious?
No. It's nothing.
You can tell me the truth. Is it serious?
Yeah. It might be.
And just walks away. And that's it. That's the most information she ever gets.
This is Dr. Dan, and he comes across as a psychotic douchebag from the very beginning. Like, he is creepy. He's got a stone-faced look on his face, almost like he's about to jump out and murder her. This guy has no bedside manner. Neither does the bald doctor who joins him. And you end up with this trio, right? It's this Dr. Dan. It's this Dr. Harry who she ran into in the doctor's lounge while she was looking for her dead doctor. And then this bald guy, I don't know if we ever got his name, who are all three just passing these x-rays between them, whispering to each other out of earshot of her, conferring, but not letting her know what they're saying, and then just being very cagey about the results. Meanwhile, we see this x-ray like 15 times.
And it looks like she's like riddled with cancer or something. I'm not a doctor, but it doesn't look good.
Yeah, it's really, I don't know what it is, but we never find out what they think it is.
No.
They're just like, we need to perform more tests. So Dr. Jacobs has her in his room, and she's like, well, I just need my test results, and I'm going to go. And he's like, well, did you talk to Dr. Jacobs? She's like, well, yeah, Dr. Jacobs did the test. Like, did Dr. Jacobs say anything to you about anything? And she's like, no, why? And he's like, well, the test results were inconclusive. We're going to need to do more tests. And she's like, more tests? And he's like, yeah. You wait right here. So he leaves. She sits there in the office. And then eventually, these nurses come in, right? This really tall gal and the other gal.
Dora and Kitty.
I loved those two, by the way. They were fantastic. But
I
they're
loved them
sinister.
Because they were like, they are, but like they're beautiful women, but they're tall, like they're big, and they're kind of like the henchmen.
Yes,
like they're the brutes. Moving her around and like holding her down and stuff.
And keep in mind, because we've already revealed the ending, they are brutes and henchmen for no reason at all.
For no reason. There's not some big plot. The movie would kind of have you think that there's some big plot, like this is a very sinister hospital and they're all in on it. No. This is just the way that they behave every day.
And so they take her to Dr. Jacobs in another room, who's just sitting out at a desk. I'm like, why didn't he come back in here to get her?
Or why didn't he just take her?
I know.
Why didn't he just take her in the first place? It was very strange and unnecessary. But yes, the examination. Now, okay, this woman is so beautiful, and knowing that she, was a playmate, I just anticipated that we would eventually see her at least topless, and we do. But it's so creepy.
It's gratuitous to the nth degree.
And he's very sinister, and he just says, get undressed. And she goes behind a screen that is lit from the back. So it's
So
literally like a burlesque striptease.
It's like classic Hollywood shit, yeah.
In a dark room. Like the room it's only lit by that light behind the screen.
Yeah.
And so she undresses back there, and then she comes out and he's like, sit on the table, and she does. And then he takes off her gown for no reason.
No
reason that she needs to be undressed for this examination. Like, But she is, and then he just runs his hands all over, and the camera just follows his hands slowly, making his way up her leg and then past her pelvis, and
It's
really gross.
It's so gross that it felt like, I was like, is this going to turn into a porn? Because the way that it's doing this, it's also showing close-ups on their faces, and he is creepy. Mm-hmm. And she is not objecting, but she also looks
very uncomfortable.
But then, I don't know, it's just weird.
Todd, she doesn't even know why this is happening.
Of course.
She came to the hospital to get a checkup because she got a new job. Like, I'm sure this is probably for her insurance or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, like, this was supposed to be an errand. And here she is now naked on a table, alone in a dark room with a man running it. Like, it's so uncomfortable. And it felt very rapey.
It
like,
did.
It felt like his intentions weren't right, and this was unnecessary, and it was putting her in an unnecessary...
And this went on for like 10 minutes.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that I read that this wasn't even in the initial script, but I don't know, they wanted more nudity or...
Yeah, that's right.
I read that the set was especially crowded that day. This is also... It's made even creepier by... This is the scene where that creepy guy with the booze is basically just jerking off outside the window, watching all of this. I didn't care for it.
Yeah.
Also, she is stunningly beautiful. I have never in my life seen pointier breasts.
I know. I know.
I was reminded of like Madonna's cones from like the Blonde Ambition tour. Very pointy.
Yeah. This woman is very shapely. The nurses then take her into a room and said, "This is your bed where you can await the test results." I'm like, what hospital is this? Usually you're waiting your test results out in the hallway. And then in this room, there are 3 of those ladies, you said, crone-like, and they're staring. I thought, is she in the mental ward or something like that? Because one of them is reciting something over and over, and then they start talking about her in front of her.
They say she's terribly sick.
But she's so young and lovely.
Young and lovely on the outside, maybe. Old and rotten on the inside. Putrid and foul.
What a pity.
I wonder what ails her. All her bones are decaying, and her organs are all rancid, and her blood is as malignant as slime.
Would you just shut up?
Was that in this scene or was that later?
I think it's later, but it doesn't matter. It's all the same. It all felt very dreamlike to me. Like, again, I was wondering, is this even real? Like,
yeah.
Is she maybe a mental patient, or is this all a dream or something? Because it was so real. And those women, yes, I read Macbeth every year because I teach it, so it's on my mind. But it made me think of the 3 witches. And again, these characters keep repeating in threes. 3 doctors, 3 old women, 3 gas mask guys. It's 3 nurses. There are 2 female nurses and 1 male nurse. Everything's in 3s. And
yeah.
That to me suggests, like surrealism.
True.
Especially since, and again, I don't know, the killer kills a couple of lab techs so that he can mess with her medical records more, because they actually do more tests. That was the most difficult part for me to watch, was when the nurse or the doctor drew blood from her. I can't handle that.
Yeah, you don't like those needles.
I can't handle it. I was talking about it with our book club yesterday, and I was telling them that I can handle like splatter gore that doesn't seem real, like in Terrifier. That doesn't seem real to me. Whatever, that's fine. But needles, I can't do it. And when I was telling them that, like, I got queasy just talking about it. But they did actually do some tests, so there are actually some results. So the killer has to kill the lab technician so that he can switch the results again.
Yes.
Which he does.
He does.
And why? I don't know. Just to keep her there?
We never really know. If he wanted to kill her, he could have killed her at any point the way that he killed any of these people. But instead, he is murdering a lot of people in this hospital just to do very mundane things like switch records. He hides in the closet. And, I mean, if this guy has access to the intercom system and can get Dr. Jacobs up to the 9th floor that's being fumigated so easily, why couldn't he just call this woman typing the records up there? But instead, we see that he's hiding in a closet because he almost pops out on her while she's, knee-deep in her typewriter. And then Nurse Nancy pops in and is like, hey, Susie. Also, her name was Susie, and that bothered me, too. Like, why would you have people with the same name in this movie? Anyway, she's like, hey, Susie, can I get you anything? I'm going to get lunch. Oh, no, thank you, Nancy, blah, blah, blah. All right, I'll be back soon. Boom. So then Susie gets up and takes off her jacket, opens that same closet door that he was in, only nothing pops out of it. So she puts the jacket in the closet, but doesn't close the closet door, which was annoying me. And then, like magic, he's suddenly behind her in the corner, behind another open door.
I noticed that too. It was strange.
Later, Nancy comes in and discovers his body. And I think even after Nancy...
And then she gets killed too.
Yeah, she gets killed. Like, she runs out into the hallway and he strangles her. Thankfully, nobody was in the hallway.
Right.
Oh, my God.
And then he just tosses her in like a closet.
Mm-hmm.
Or, no, like I think he puts her in a wheelchair. Just like shoves it down a hallway.
There.
That was hilarious.
That was funny. Yeah.
Around this time, Jack, I think, is that her fiance's name? I guess he's finally gotten tired of waiting in the car after hours of having been in there.
I laughed so hard at this because I thought that Jack had dropped her off.
Me too.
And it's dark outside now. And we just get this shot of Jack in the car who has nodded off and he wakes up. And I'm like, oh my God, Jack has been waiting outside for 6 hours. This is nuts.
And he goes in and he has trouble finding her, but eventually he finds her. At this point, she's like in a hospital gown, like the tiniest little hospital gown I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It looks like a children's, like it barely covers her crotch.
For good, yeah, we know why.
She's like, you got to get me out of here. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's happening. He's like, fine, I'll get you out of here. But they get stopped. And the two burly nurses and Dr. Dan, they're like, she has to stay for observation. And the guy's like, why? And they don't tell. Dr. Dan's like, go sit outside my office. I'll talk to you later. And he's like, okay. Like, what is happening?
They manhandle this poor woman back into the room. She's screaming. She's like, what's going on? Somebody tell me what's going on. And you just wouldn't believe that nothing's going on. They're just terrible people.
Well, and I can only imagine. Put yourself in Dan's shoes. There's no way that you just be like, okay, I'll just go sit and wait outside your office.
No.
Like, when my perfectly healthy
Of course not.
fiance, who I dropped off 3 hours ago,
Who's in distress.
right, while you just drag her back to some room. Okay, whatever. But he does. He goes and sits outside the office, and then he immediately gets paged, and so somebody's like, will the gentleman outside Dr. Dan's office please pick up the phone? And so he picks up the phone. He's like, I'm the man outside Dr. Dan's office. Are you looking for me? He's like, yeah, come up to the 9th floor. He's like, okay. So, so he goes up to the scary 9th floor.
He doesn't take the elevator, which would be what a normal person would do, but he takes the dark fire escape. There's another jump scare with Hal, the drunk guy. Mm-hmm. And then he ends up upstairs, and he's upstairs. And again, just like everybody who goes to the 9th floor, he's walking through fog. But he doesn't seem to think this is weird. Mm-hmm. And it's dark up there, and everything looks like it's in chaos. Suddenly, those 3 old ladies come out of the fog, walking towards him. Have you seen Dr. Jacob? And he doesn't even answer. And then they just kind of cackle and walk on by. At this point, I thought, okay, this movie's messing with me. Like you said, there's some dream thing going on. Mm-hmm. I thought for sure that there's a ghost thing. I don't know. But why would those 3 ladies have just shown up out of the fog on that floor? I still don't know why.
I don't either. You said that there was that creepy Hal jump scare, and there is, but that was also weird too, because he just kind of pops out bumbling around drunk. But then when the fiance walks away, he kind of straightens up. I almost got the impression he was faking being drunk. Did you catch that?
Oh.
I don't know. All of it's red herrings.
It is. Yeah.
And then the old ladies see him, and then he hears a whisper, hey, come here, come closer. And he does, like a dummy. And and then the whispering is so funny.
Is she your mistress? I beg your pardon? Are you sleeping together? Does she let you hold her in your arms? Can you touch her wherever you like in all her her secret places.
And like he's hearing all of this and he just keeps walking forward like run away.
Oh my God. The dialogue was so hilarious.
And then he gets killed. He gets killed with a bone saw and apparently decapitated because immediately thereafter, Susan is alone in her room and she's not asleep, but she has her back to the door. And the killer very slowly walks in carrying a box. This was so Valentine's Day too.
Yeah.
A big red box, and he puts it on her nightstand.
Like a hat box.
She seems to be aware that there's somebody there, but she doesn't turn around until after he turns around and walks out. He turns around and walks out. She opens the hat box, and it's the fiancé's head.
I knew that was coming from a mile away.
Yeah.
So then she runs out screaming. And she runs screaming from the quote-unquote woman's ward into a random doorway, and there are 3 completely bandaged guys. It's that classic, I don't know, somebody who fell off a building or got hit by a car or something like that, where every inch of their body is covered in bandages and like their legs are being held up.
And your limbs are suspended. Right. But again, this feels like a freakish nightmare. This feels like something out of Nightmare on Elm Street or Hellraiser.
Yeah.
She runs into this room and it's not like these 3 guys are just there, like this is just the intensive care unit or something. No, they're thrashing around wildly. Like it's and honestly, it's very cool imagery.
It is.
And it's spooky, but again, it just feels like let's make a scary movie paint by numbers.
Yeah.
The story doesn't matter. Connections don't matter. Everything can be a red herring. Everything can be spooky. She can be on the payphone and some weirdo can just come stand up behind her and stare at her menacingly.
That was the director, by the way. Did you know that?
Yeah, I read that. You get to a point very early on where you realize that is what is happening.
Yeah.
So
you can't take it seriously.
You can't take it seriously. The only suspenseful thing to me was I thought that maybe there would be a twist, that maybe there is something, that there's a conspiracy, or that there is something more sinister going on, but it's not.
No.
He makes the people, the real, apparently, medical staff think that she's crazy while tormenting her. She's trying to run away, but he gets, she's waiting for the elevator, but he shows up and she has to hide behind a screen. And it's supposed to be like she drops her lighter. Todd, where is she keeping this lighter?
I know. I want to know where she's holding this lighter. And I mean, there's only one possibility. Let me just put it that way.
Think of the possibilities, I suppose, because she just has it sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, it's fine. Like, I understand that as a person, she would have a lighter on her because she's a smoker. We see her smoking several times in the hospital.
But it's the only thing she has on her, and she has no pockets.
No pockets. She's in panties, a very, very small hospital gown with no pockets. So,
yeah.
I don't know. But she has it, and at this point she drops it, and it's supposed to be suspenseful, like he hears it, but he doesn't find her, and she ends up getting put back in the room for some reason.
Oh my God. This is where I checked the time, and I was like, oh my God, it's only been an hour, and we still have 20 minutes left.
I don't even remember. She sees Dr. Dan get killed in like the records room, another scene that goes on for far too long.
Dr. Dan is in the archives room, which is apparently just a narrow closet and no shelves. It's just, but I don't know how you're supposed to get anything out of this, because it's just like 10 boxes stacked on top of each other.
A wall.
And he, for some reason, again, like every other place in this hospital, is completely dark, and he has to read everything by flashlight. And the killer improbably pops up behind him. So she runs away because she sees that and into like a random staircase and all that.
But they get a hold of her again. They still think she's crazy. And at this point, the nurses strap her down to a gurney, and she's screaming. She's like, "Stupid nurse! This whole hospital is nuts!" And then Bald Doctor says, "If there's any more of this, I'm going to have to operate." What? What are you talking about?
I laughed so hard at that.
And he goes to get ready to operate. But before that, there's a random scene where there's a female doctor who I don't know that we've ever seen before.
Nope.
In the hallway.
Yep.
And she just sees the killer approaching from down the hallway, holding up in front of himself a big white sheet, and he is lit. The only lighting in the hallway is from behind him. So again, it's just his silhouette behind a sheet. Again, this is just a cool scene that has nothing to do with anything else.
Yeah.
But I loved it.
It was awesome.
Visually, it was very cool. It was very spooky. And he just advances on her. She's scared. She's screaming. She turns to try to run, but he just runs up, throws the sheet over her, and then, in a very giallo style, injects her right in the chest with a huge syringe full of something. And then he walks away, and she just stumbles around in that sheet. It was really cool until she eventually collapses and dies.
Watching this, I thought this was a scene that was made for the trailer.
Yeah.
You know, when you're cutting different scenes for this movie, this awesome-ass shot of this guy coming down the hallway lit from behind with the sheet in front of him, just steadily coming towards her while she basically stands there and lets him do it. It was a badass scene.
You're right, though. It was shot for the trailer, absolutely. I mean, it is literally just stuck in there. But the other doctor, bald doctor, is prepping for surgery, but he gets killed. He gets, I think, like a long bone saw or something through his body. And then, I don't remember, that was a cool death, too.
That was cool, because it came from behind through, like, there was like a divider, some kind of paneling behind him, and it came through the back of the paneling into his neck. As his body fell down, that blade was tearing through the paneling as it came down. It was kind of cool. Yeah.
There are good, interesting scenes in this movie. I definitely, and I'm not skipping the end, I'll come right back to it, but talking about those two scenes back to back, those two kills that were really fun to watch and really visually stimulating, this movie is definitely worth seeing once.
Yeah, only once.
Like, I think if you are like me or you, fans of the 80s in particular, but these types of slashers also, and you've not seen it, it's going to be a fun little Easter egg. Get your friends together. Get your friends together.
Uh-huh.
This isn't, trust me when I tell you, this isn't a watch this movie at work at 10:30 in the morning kind of experience.
No, this is with your friends.
You want to get some friends together and have fun with it, because the dialogue doesn't matter. There is no story. You could just talk and goof through this whole movie and still be able to see the good parts, and I think have a lot of fun celebrating and cheering on the good parts.
And if you needed to save some time, you could probably play it at 1.25 or 1.5 speed.
You could. You probably could, really.
And then it would match basically the pacing of every other better horror movie.
But anyway, this is when the killer comes and gets her, because she's still strapped to a gurney. He wheels her to a dark operating room, and then he unstraps her and puts her on a table where she lays motionless.
Yeah, for no reason.
For the next 5 minutes.
Yeah.
For no reason.
Yeah, she decides to not struggle.
She's not restrained.
When she's unrestrained, suddenly she stops struggling.
He's busying himself with like surgical instruments. Like he's got his back to her, basically.
Yep.
She could have jumped off the table and run away, but she does not.
By the way, was there a screwdriver in there with the surgical instruments?
I don't know. I wasn't paying
I saw a
attention.
screwdriver.
This is when she pulls off his mask and it's revealed that it's Dr. Harry, and we get the flashbacks, which are totally unnecessary, or should be, and go on. Like it flashes flashback, then it flashes to his face, then it flashes to the flashback of her, and then it flashes to her face. Like, put this together, audience. And she's like, "Oh, what do you want from me?" He says, "What I've always wanted, your heart." And he starts to go to like cut it out as she's just laying there. And then those three old ladies interrupt again.
Yeah, they just pop in randomly.
There is something about these three old ladies.
Yeah.
I feel like, aren't the Fates like three ladies or something?
Yeah.
There's something going on. There's something intentional with
the
these three
eyeball
old ladies.
between
I don't know
them.
what it is.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
It's I mean, if I were to give this movie more credit than it deserved, you would think that there could be an analysis and maybe there was some actual artistic reason for putting these ladies in there. I don't actually think there was.
Or again, just throwing shit at the wall is
100%.
probably more likely.
They're the only ones left to guess to be able to stumble into the room randomly, which is exactly what happened.
I don't know. Creepy drunk guy still around?
Oh, that's
There's still
true.
people- I don't know.
We don't know what happened to him, do we?
No. But while he's distracted by the old lady, Susan grabs a surgical instrument and stabs him in the gut, and she finally runs away. And he chases her, still with the knife in his gut, and there's a long, boring pursuit in like a stock room that goes on forever.
She climbs up a ladder for some reason.
She climbs. Where is she going?
I don't know what she thought she was doing.
There's a ladder in a room. It doesn't appear to be going anywhere.
But it goes to the top of the stacks. That's all it goes to. But at the very top of the ladder, as he grabs her legs, she accidentally pulls over a big flask marked flammable liquid that spills onto his face. I saw flammable liquid, and then at first I thought, oh, well, this is going to like eat up his face, but it doesn't. And I thought, oh, okay. So that plus her lighter is going to be our big finale.
She gets away briefly, and she beats him with a huge pipe.
On the roof.
On the roof, right. And then he gets her on the ground, and he's like on top of her. I don't know what's happening.
He's got a knife over her head, yeah.
She magically has her lighter again, or it's magically just there on the ground
fell
right
out
next to her.
From where she keeps it.
Stop. Oh,
we didn't get a close up of that.
So she grabs it and she sets him on fire, and he stumbles around. She runs towards the ledge of the roof, and she jumps out of the way just as he lunges at her, and then somebody throws a dummy that's on fire off of a building and films it. Right. And then, in my notes, I have he falls off, dummy thrown off building. She f***ing leaves.
Yes.
It's like she's
all dolled up. She's got her clothes back on. Her hair is perfect. Her makeup is perfect. She walks out the door. It's the middle of the day again, into the now apparently loving arms of Tom and that girl.
And her daughter.
Yeah.
Like, happy family.
So abrupt.
The end.
That was the most merciful thing about this movie, is that it just ended when it needed to. I mean, I didn't want to see another second beyond that guy falling off.
5 to 7 people were murdered. She just walks out. Nothing is happening.
Nope. No
the hospital
police.
is just going about its business.
There's still
no
ambulance
police,
pulled up
nothing.
and cots going in and out. None of that.
It's fine. It's over. The end.
Oh, man. When you think about what this guy went through, for this little girl who turned down his Valentines when he was a kid, it's a pretty big deal.
Bro went to medical school. Like,
staged this chance meeting in the doctor's lounge. Waited till she needed her checkups.
I would say that he could have just been posing as a doctor, but I don't think so, because
they were
all the other
talking to him.
doctors knew him.
Yeah, they all knew him.
Yeah. This was a long game.
Maybe they were in on it, but they weren't in on all of it. And he had to murder them so that they didn't tell the police.
Who knows?
You know what? I loved this movie. I enjoyed the act of watching this movie.
Same.
From beginning to end. I will not see again. But I felt, obviously, it was really, really slow. And that could be maddening at times. But darn it, some of the comedy just came from the fact that it was so slow and deliberate and intense.
Yeah.
When it didn't need to be. It was really kind of funny. So, yeah, I'm not going to watch it again. But I think you should watch it with friends, just like you said, Craig.
Yes, I agree. And the recreational substances of your choice would be fine. Mm-hmm. That might help, too. But I feel the exact same way. I don't need to reiterate exactly what you just said. I feel the same way. It was a pleasure to be able to have the experience of seeing a movie like this for the first time.
Yeah.
It's very rare that I get to have that experience, and it was fun. Like Todd said, I think that you would enjoy that experience too. The movie's fine. It's not great, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah, a nice, dumb movie. I hope we can find some more of these this year. Happy Valentine's Day to you again, Craig. You know I love you as my friend here, getting together every week. And all of you listeners out there, we love you as well. We really appreciate you out there. You're the reason we keep doing this.
I love you too, bro.
Thank you. Thank you, my friend. We love you too, listeners out there, no matter where you are. We love hearing from you. We love our patrons out there who suggest things for us and who have nice discussions with us behind the scenes. They, of course, get our complete unedited episodes. But also, we have a great little book club going on back there that Craig mentioned earlier. We're reading and then there were none. And by the end of this week, we're going to be chatting about it. So if something like that interests you, we do a book every couple weeks that is horror or horror adjacent. You can just go to patreon.com/chainsaw podcast and think about signing up for $5 a month. You get access to that, mini-sodes, mini reviews, and a whole lot more. You can also just find us by Googling Two Guys in a Chainsaw Podcast, and every one of our social media, please drop us a note. Let us know what you thought of this movie if you'd seen it. Give us some suggestions for future movies coming up. Until next time, I'm Todd.
And I'm Craig.
With Two Guys in a Chainsaw.